Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Hands On channel. Man, oh man, I told you guys, I don't know, a year ago now that if we elected this guy, Biden, to the office of President of the United States, that communism would ensue. Communism would follow. You know, communist policies, communist ideologies, all this other stuff. And I mean, every time I turn the news on now, I'm just like, yep, that's another example of Marxism and communism infiltrating our system right in front of our faces. And of course, the majority of the youth and the majority of, honestly, I guess all Americans are just kind of like zombies. You know, they're mainstream news zombies. So whatever the mainstream media tells them, that's what they believe. And you can go and try to show them evidence. You can go and try to, you know, provide them with the documentation, the proof that these different things are happening, and they will not believe it because the mainstream media has told them to believe the opposite of that. So that's what we're in the middle of right now. We're in kind of the division part of the program, divide and conquer, you know, get everybody into different groups, people that have had the V, people that haven't had the V. And of course, if you're a news watcher, you probably are aware, even on the MSM, they're bragging about how they just granted full FDA approval of the Pfizer jab. So there was one senator, and forgive me, I can't remember the guy's name, but there was one senator, and he was, you know, raising a stink about it and saying, hey, wait a minute, you guys need to slow this down. You haven't even done the proper vetting of this process. You haven't correctly counted all of the deaths or the you know, ill side effects that have been building up related to the V. So, and I got to be really careful, guys. That's why I'm calling it the V and all this stuff, because YouTube will take my video down if I say anything that is deemed unacceptable to the mainstream media. Yet again, another crystal clear proof that communism has its full grasp on the United States of America. You know, so Pfizer has got FDA approval now. What does that mean? Well, it means exactly what Biden's basically, who was that guy the other day? Vivan or something, I can't remember the guy's name, but the health guy, you know, he's the head of the health department or whatever. He basically said that, you know, once they get the FDA approval of the V, then it'd be easier for them to mandate and do mandates. And what do you know, just like it was all scripted, Biden came out today. So he came out today and he's asking employers, not forcing them, but asking them to implement mandates for the V as a condition of employment. So you know, I've been talking to my wife, and we're both really stressed out about this whole deal because we're not anti-vaxxers per se, but we're not sure about this one. And we're like, no, I think we're going to wait a while and see how this plays out. And sure enough, a lot of people have had, you know, ill side effects from this, but they're covering that up for whatever reason. I think it's pretty obvious why they're covering it up. It's because, you know, if you started telling that to everybody, then less people would go out and get the thing, and it would probably cause a chain reaction. A lot of people will be very skeptical and all this. And the FDA and the people at Pfizer claim that this is going to help to basically spread the good gospel of the New World Order V for everybody, the mandate for everybody. And of course, if you're a business owner, okay, just look at this financially for a second. So let's say you're a business owner of any kind, you know, and you produce a product that people need or whatever, or it's perceived there. So the perception is created that this product is needed for you to continue on and, you know, be a normal American and go on your day-to-day life, right? Well, if you're that business and the government grants a approval of your V or your product, whatever that product is, you're automatically rolling in trillions and trillions of dollars, because now you were the only one that has the approval. So everyone is going to go rushing to that particular, the ones that were already going to get the V anyways, they're going to go rushing to that particular brand of it. And so therefore, I would argue there is immense financial motivations behind this move. The federal government, you know, Biden, you know, Trump did this too. Trump got this whole deal started with the fast track BS. But, you know, I'm just blown away because only one senator stood up to this thing and said, hey, wait a minute, we need to look into this and slow this thing down because you guys are skipping a lot of the essential things to give this FDA approval. So immediately I was like, oh my God, what kind of tests did they skip? Well, you know, according to the Nuremberg Code and all this other stuff, they skipped all the animal trials. And of course, that's part of the fast track thing. But we're still in a trial phase of this deal. And that's what's bothering me, is now because the FDA has granted approval for this thing, they're going to be able to say, oh, this is no longer experimental. The FDA is approving this. We have, you know, sanctioned this to be an approved V. So guys, look out, man. They are getting ready to start mandating this stuff all around the country. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if the V passport doesn't quickly follow that. You know, out in Australia, they're doing this thing on your phone where you have to have a QR code to go anywhere. You can look that up if you want. You know, I didn't bring any stories. I'm just doing all this off the top of my head, guys. So if I missed something, forgive me. I'm not even going to talk about Afghanistan because I think that's a big time distraction. I think it's a big time distraction to keep our mind out of what's going on with the mandated, forced, you know, V. This is not the, I don't recognize this country anymore. I no longer recognize the United States of America as a free and independent country of people that are into self-governance and, you know, individual liberty. That's just like gone now. It's like everybody just let it go and no one stood up and said anything. So guys, we are in a world of hurt. I mean, you know, whatever you want to call it, you know, we're going to hell in a handbasket. I've said that multiple times. You know, I remember the old timers used to say that when I was growing up, and I was just like, yeah, whatever, okay. You know, sure, you just don't like the younger generation. But I'm telling you guys, that is not it. We have a major totalitarian shift in this country that we're going through right now. And really, now is the time to be doing something, to be doing peaceful non-compliance. You know, if you want to know more about that, go watch Chris Ann Hall's movie. I believe it's free on the internet. It's not on YouTube, but you can go find it. Search, type in chrisannhall.com, and you'll find their movie, Non-Compliant. And it talks all about what to do to basically keep you within the limits of the law as long as possible anyways, but where you can put up some sort of resistance against this stuff. Because, I mean, this is just insane. You know, I don't know if you heard it or not, but like 2 or 3 days ago, Trump had a huge rally down in Alabama, I think it was. I believe it was Alabama. And he was going on and on about how everybody, at one point in the speech, he started talking about how everybody needed to go out and get the V, and they booed him. It's the first time I've ever heard a major crowd of Trump supporters boo Trump. So it gives me some hope that they're not totally zombified, you know, just Trump sycophants, because, you know, I don't think that's good for America either, is to just blindly trust Trump, because he did several things in his last administration that were like pretty eyebrow raising. One example of that was, you know, banning bump stocks. You know, I mean, whether or not you think bump stocks should have been banned or not, that's irrelevant. The point is he caved to the Democrats because I'm sure they promised him, just like they always do, that, oh yeah, if you do this one thing for us, we'll do these one things for you over here. Bullshit. They never do it. It's never reciprocal. There's never any back and forth with these Democrats. They trick you, they cheat you right to your face, and then the Republicans are just like, I don't know, they're like Gomer Pyle or something. They're just like, oh yeah, or like Lucy, or like Charlie Brown, and Lucy's holding the football, and these Republicans are just, every time they take the swing, they take the kick, they think, oh yeah, Lucy's going to hold the ball this time. She's not going to move it out of the way at the last second. But these Democrats, like Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, all these other commies that are in the power right now, they're the ones moving the football, and no one ever holds them accountable, mainly because, you know, they control the media, and we've talked about that in depth over in the channel over the years here, the last couple of years. So go back and watch those videos. Go check out our older stuff. We've covered all of this stuff. The only thing is we didn't know the fine details of how it was going to go down. This is how it's going to go down. They're going to continue to divide us. They're going to continue to make us either V or no V, and that number of no V is going to continue to shrink because a lot of people are going to cave to the pressure. Even people that were against it before are now going to cave to the pressure because they're going to go, well, it's FDA approved, it must be safe, and their doctors are going to tell them to go get it. I've had 2 people now, older people, both of them, 2 of them, that died suddenly under suspicious circumstances after taking the V. I know 0 people to this point after, you know, over what, 500 days that they said, you know, oh, 15 days to stop the spread. Now it's been 500 and something days, and they're still talking about going back into lockdown, still talking about mask mandates, still talking about vax mandates, and all this other stuff that's just over the top Orwellian, guys. I mean, you know, and as I've been researching this stuff, I'm just like, okay, what would our founding fathers have done? You know, what would even closer back than that? We don't need to go all the way back to the 1700s. Let's go back to the early 1900s when they had the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl and stuff like that. I spent like an hour and a half yesterday on internet searches just looking at pictures from the Great Depression. There's a lot of stuff you can glean, a lot of knowledge you can glean from the way that our forefathers dealt with the Great Depression. And you know, there was this one old boy, I read his little story there. It was kind of a, you know, a summary of his story. And he was somewhere like New Mexico or something like that. But he was already set up as a homesteader. He had a fully functional homestead before the Great Depression happened. And he was talking about, like, he was like, well, nothing really changed for me. I produce everything I need here. And, you know, he was still able to do some bartering with the stuff that he did have. You know, I mean, I'm sure he wasn't making salt and stuff like that, the things we've talked about in the past. There's always going to be something. And if you're on some sort of medication that's keeping you alive, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Try to get your doctor to give you some, because, you know, we could be facing a situation where they're intentionally trying to get rid of the weaker people in this country. That's what I think is happening. That's what I think the whole purpose of this, the whole thing, the whole pandemic, the whole thing. I think the whole purpose of this, it was, in my opinion, it was a designer virus that was designed to attack people that had a weakened immune system state or were older people. You know, the Chinese, I've talked about this before, and I don't mean I'm not trying to be, you know, derogatory to the older audience that watches this channel. I'm just telling you what I'm seeing happening. You know, the Chinese people, they have 1.4, 1.5 billion people over there. They have every single reason, because those people aren't granted, you know, the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness like we are. They have no Bill of Rights over there. The Chinese people have absolute totalitarian, dictatorial control over their people. So if you're the Chinese government and you're sitting there looking at your people and going, okay, let's see who the producers are. Okay, we got all these people that are like from, you know, 17 to, you know, 55, let's say. And I'm just pulling those numbers out of my ear here. So I don't know for 100% certain, but I'm just guessing here. I'm speculating what they might have done. What they might have done is they might have looked at the older population and gone, you know what? These older people, they're not able to work anymore because they're too old. They're basically just consumers of food. They're consumers of space. They're consumers of our resources. And from a depopulation perspective, it only makes sense to depopulate the older generation first. The biggest scheme in the world, the biggest seizure of not only resources, but money and all sorts of stuff is being shifted right now. And what are the communist goals that I'm speaking of? Well, one of those things is get rid of, you know, abolish private property rights. They hate private property because they know if you have private property, you can be your own person. You can go out there and, you know, grow yourself some crops or maybe live off your land if you have the resources for that. And they don't like that because that gives you independence. So the other thing they don't like is the family unit. So I would argue that this forced V and just the V in general, the conditions of this whole thing have divided families all over this country. So check mark, that's another check mark for communism there. And of course they hate the Second Amendment. So look real soon for them to make a big move against the Second Amendment. You know, it's hard to enforce your mandates when your citizenry is armed. So I think what's going to happen is they're going to continue to push this to a head. And they're going to continue to make our, you know, the unV'd people, the people that are adamantly opposed against this. And, you know, maybe they have religious reasons like myself. And I'm going to tell you right now what my religious reasons are. Well, if you look real quickly at Genesis 6, it talks about Noah's flood and the cause of Noah's flood. And just a summary here, the cause is that the genetics were manipulated by the fallen ones, the fallen angels, the watchers, whatever you want to call them, the Nephilim. They came down to the earth, they bred with human women, they polluted the genetics. It angered God. At least that's my interpretation of the whole situation. So I heard a scientist earlier today, and this guy was a PhD, and I can't recall where he was giving his little talk at or whatever, but it was on, I saw it on Alex Jones, and it looked like it was at a school somewhere. And he was basically saying that anybody that got this thing, they were doing things to the genetics inside of the body. And these are permanent things that make you no longer classified as a human being anymore. Now, I know that sounds a little far-fetched, but could it be that this is what brings on Armageddon? Or this is what brings on, you know, the wrath of God? onto our country. Maybe it won't be the final one. Maybe it won't be Armageddon. But what if the wrath of God is unleashed because these scientists have been manipulating genetics? I don't know. These are questions I ask myself all the time. And those are the religious reasons that I'm not going to do it. You know, I want to go, you know, God gave humanity dominion over the earth. He didn't give some chimera dominion over the earth. It was humanity. And they're claiming that this stuff changes your genetics. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a virologist. I'm just a mechanic and a country boy that's kind of scared out of my mind because I can see the writing on the wall and I think I know what comes next. We've talked about it a couple of videos ago. I did the thing about the CDC's plan to come and seize your property. And I think that's very likely, guys. Go watch that video if you haven't seen it. I'm not going to go over a bunch of that stuff again or rehash it. Go watch it, please. It's like the CDC's plan to take your land or something like that. I'll provide a link here at the end of the video. But guys, stay strong. And I hate to put my worry out there on you, but I know from the comments, watching the Hands On channel comments and reading your comments and stuff like that, I know that you're worried about this too. And I wanted you to know you're not alone out there. Stay strong. I stand for liberty. I hope you do too. And when I say that, I mean to the bitter end. Appreciate it, guys. We'll see you next time.